Hello, everyone, and welcome to Protect Your Amazon S3 Data, Why Versioning, Replication, and AWS Backup Are Not Enough. Today's webinar is sponsored by Rubrik and produced by Actual Tech Media. I'm Keith Ward. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I am super stoked to be your moderator for today's event. But before we go there, we have a few housekeeping items I gotta let you know about. First off, we want to hear from you. We encourage any and all questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. We also want to know where you're logging in from, and you do that in the same place. Now, that Q&A panel is also where you go to get help. If you can't hear or see something or something else goes wrong, give your browser a quick refresh or two, as that fixes most issues. If that doesn't work, though, let us know in that Q&A panel. We'll hop on and assist you. Up next, take a look at the handouts section. That's right there next to the Q&A tab. And there you will find a bunch of great resources, including 3 free handouts from Rubrik. They include how to protect your AWS data, a link for requesting a demo, and an overview of Rubrik Cloud Native Protection within AWS. Another goodie you'll find in the handouts is a link to our Events Center, which has our calendar of more upcoming events. Look that over, see what looks good to you, and sign up after the event today. Finally, at the end of the webinar, we are going to be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one of you. Now, you do have to be in attendance during the entire event to qualify for the prize. The official terms and conditions of the prize drawing are also in the handout section. You'll find those right at the bottom. And with that, enough of me. Let's get to the main event. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. They are Joe Ruck, the GTM tech lead for Cloud Native, and Daniel Liu with the product marketing cloud team at Rubrik. Daniel is going to be kicking this off, so I'm going to hand you the virtual mic here. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to join our webinar today. My name is Daniel Liu. I'm part of the product marketing team here at Rubrik, and I'm joined by Joe Ruck, who's a cloud architect here at Rubrik as well. Very excited today to talk to you guys about protecting your Amazon S3 data, why versioning, replication, and AWS backup are not enough. Quick agenda. It's going to be a short 30 minutes to get you guys in and out here. We're going to talk about some of the myths around S3 data protection. This will be the bulk of our conversation today. Then we'll get into a little bit of how Rubrik helps in this conversation. Not meant to be a full-on commercial here, but just wanted to highlight some of the things that we do and to help our customers. And we'll end with Joe giving a brief demo just to give you guys some insight into how it all looks and works in a real-world application. So with that, I'm going to quickly introduce S3. You guys hopefully know S3. You guys are using it, which is why you're here in this webinar. But wanted to flash up some cool trivia that I found online. And what is most interesting to me is that traffic peaks at over 1 petabyte per second. I think that's an amazing stat. Just really shows the level of scale that S3 accomplishes. And so what I wanted to really bring to light with some of these stats is that S3 is a data source that is critical to your business and needs to be protected. It's often overlooked or often not thought about as critical data. And I wanted to make sure that we go through some reasons why, in fact, it is an important thing to think about. And so some of you guys may initially be thinking, hey, Daniel, that's great. I have everything in AWS. And AWS is, by definition, a very durable and highly available service. They have specifically S3, 99.99999% durability. And so my data is not going to be lost. I'm good. And what I mean by durability and availability, for those just not in the know, durability is the probability that your data will be intact. So will my data be lost or corrupt? And availability means the probability that your data will be reachable. So can I get access to my data when I want it? And as you can see, these are very, very robust numbers. Data that is put into Amazon S3, you are most likely not going to lose it. It's not going to be corrupt, and you will most likely get access to it when you want to. So you're asking, and why then, Daniel, are you telling me that we need to protect S3? Why do we need to back it up? Why do we need to ensure that it's available? I get that from Amazon already. So Joe, these are amazing numbers. Why do we need to worry about backing up S3 then?
Sure. So, as you showed in that slide, 11 nines of durability for S3 standard. It's quite impressive. But durability is not the same as cyber resilience. So the fact that the data is not going to be unintentionally removed doesn't mean that it's not going to be forcibly removed. It doesn't mean that there isn't a programmatic mistake. It doesn't mean that there's not malware or bad data in that repository. And then availability, there's nothing we've seen in the past. There's nothing stopping from it could be a configuration, networking issue, or a regional issue, either by the customer or through AWS that makes the data inaccessible. So every customer of AWS has seen this slide. What does it mean? AWS has a shared responsibility model, and AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud, but the customer is responsibility for security in the cloud. So what does that mean? Let's look at S3 for a second. S3 has so many ubiquitous uses that it's hard to look at every single one, but there is some common patterns. And so I've seen automation that would delete data and organizations not know about it till too late. There is no native tool that plugs into S3 that can detect malware or ransomware. Likewise, if a customer gained access, and I've seen this, gained access to one account, they may be able to move laterally, exfiltrating data from an S3 bucket. And it could be that you have a disgruntled employee that is downloading data to take with them as another method of exfiltration.
Okay, that sounds good. I guess I can't rely on AWS in itself to protect all my data, but that doesn't really matter because honestly, S3 is just a dumping ground. It's mostly unimportant information, bunch of, dev files, maybe log files. I don't know, just stuff that I don't really need. So why do I need to spend all this time and money and energy thinking about protecting it all?
It's a good question. So if you look at forensics of S3 buckets, there's a lot more pertinent information inside those S3 buckets that fall into multiple frameworks, whether it be PII or PCI or HIPAA. And so those S3 object stores, which may seem innocuous or anything but. So I classify this really into what I call the 3Ds. Now you mentioned dumping ground. That certainly is a use case. Things like CloudTrail logs, CloudWatch logs, but for all intents and purposes, your automation, your pipeline information. I've seen information stores that leverage S3 for backend IP addressing your network configuration. I have not seen a customer that didn't use S3 to back up some sort of relational database and or set up a read-only repository. And then likewise, S3 is the standard for when you're building a data lake in AWS. A lot of EHR systems, because of the cost of data, will leverage S3 for image and video diagnostics because those are quite large. A lot of legal firms will use S3 for legal holds, and then likewise, a lot of our manufacturing customers will store schematics and plans. And then a lot of websites, especially ones that are leveraging a CDN, will back in with S3. So it is certainly a tremendous amount of internal and external website content. And there are numerous file share backends that leverage S3 Object Store due to its ability of both size, capacity, and access.
So it sounds like the takeaway here then, Joe, is that the reality is that there's a ton of business critical, sensitive data that you don't want to lose, you don't want to misplace. And if these happen to be lost, you would be in a world of hurt. And so, okay, I get it. I probably need to think about backing it up or managing it somehow. But I got a solution for that. I got versioning and replication. That helps me make sure that I have a copy of what I need and it never gets lost. So there you go. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, so it's AWS has definitely responded to their customers' needs, and versioning is a very good tool. But it's really just for ease of recovery. And then likewise, replication is really driven towards business continuity and helping a company achieve its SLA. So what do I mean by this? So versioning at a high level is going to keep exactly what it sounds like, versions of objects. It's really intended for quick restore of a file. But here's what it doesn't do. If you had malicious programmatic deletions that were undetected, if someone didn't know they had to restore from a previous version, it doesn't detect if there's malware. And likewise, there's really no visibility into sensitive data for taxonomy. A couple things about cost. You'll notice this is true. If for a lot of services in AWS backup, they require versioning, and so you have to turn it on. And then once it's turned on, it can't be turned off. So it increases storage costs. So you might say, okay, well, replication is the answer. Again, replication is a very good tool, but it's really about business continuity, meaning I need to ensure that I have continuity of operations if I had a regional failure. And so you'll replicate that data. So it could be a compliance play. If, for instance, you're financial services, you need to demonstrate that you have that accessibility for those files. Here's the issues with replication. It's not a real air gapping solution, meaning anyone who had, if a bad actor was in your environment, and by the way, they're logging in, they're not breaking in. An actor is in there, they will see those replication streams, and so there is no air gap because the configuration would show that. You're going to replicate anything from the destination to the source, including malware and viruses. There's not a ton of visibility in terms of sensitive data, the replication stream, failures. The conflict avoidance isn't always excellent. This is true for multiple replication technologies. And there's limits both in tiering. And then lastly, this is another cost factor. When you think of replication, you just need to think in terms of, for every one piece of data, I'm paying 2 units of cost.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a great long-term solution here. Okay, I agree. Replication, versioning, good for certain use cases, maybe not great for malicious deletions, cyber attacks, things along those lines. But there's something that AWS has. They have AWS Backup. It's a great solution. I love it. It's easy to turn on. It does what I need it to do. Backs up my S3, takes a snapshot, and that helps with where I need to go, right?
So AWS Backup is great for customers. They're at the beginning of their stage of adoption. What I'll simply suggest is that once you start to scale, and specifically for our customers that may be in AWS, but also have infrastructure E365, Microsoft, Google, or on-prem, it's a backup product. It's not a cybersecurity product, and it doesn't scale as you grow your organization, especially in a multitude of environments. So again, AWS Backup, really good tool, and when you're getting started, it definitely could be leveraged. What you'll notice, AWS, when you start a landing zone in AWS, you may start with one account, but then if you're following AWS's best practices, you're not going to leverage the root account. You're going to create worker node accounts. You're going to create automation accounts. You're going to create networking. database, production, QA, dev. And so what ends up happening is what started with one account proliferates to dozens of accounts or hundreds of accounts. And so it's really hard in a multi-account or even multi-organizational environment to actually gain some sort of baseline. So it's very operationally complex to derive those policies to achieve the business outcome. Likewise, in terms of visibility, there's no real way to gain a comprehensive report that basically answers two questions. Who's responsible for backup of the cloud? And more importantly, who's responsible for cyber resilience and recovery of the cloud? So security, this is a big differentiator. So AWS has a number of really great security practices. In AWS Backup, when you leverage their logical air gap vault, it in fact does work. The problem is you'll notice on the second bullet point, it requires that AWS maintain the encryption. So for a lot of our customers that have attestations and certain security requirements, this simply isn't an option. So there's no true air gapping. Without leveraging additional third-party tools, there's no insight into the sensitive data. And even something like Macy is really just going to scan S3. So there's no real indicators of compromise or additional forensics. Lastly, and in security, when you do have a ransomware event, again, AWS has excellent response, but you're initially not going to talk to somebody who's trained in ransomware recovery. You're going to talk to a generalist that's going to collect the information, reset that SLA, and then get you somebody who has more expertise. So, if the backup was a challenge for all of those environments, the recovery also shares all of those same limitations, along with a number of other limitations, certainly around the way in which you recover is not seamless across all those platforms. There's really different recovery strategies for each of those services. And cost optimization is one that I also would want to point to. When you take a backup in AWS Backup, it goes to that backup vault that has a certain pricing. A lot of times it's 5 times more expensive than even a cheaper tier at AWS, but they simply just don't have the tiering flexibility. And they do have a tier, and it is a version of Glacier. But again, it's not easy to deploy across all those separate services. And so from a standpoint of how do we ensure that we have good FinOps practices, it really does take multiple personas, multiple tools, and customization. It really becomes a bring your own engineer exercise.
So let's summarize here. What did we learn? Joe went through a couple different things that really highlights the need for something more robust for data security. We learned that I'm responsible for protecting my AWS data. So that's because of the shared responsibility model. I learned that my data stored in S3 is probably sensitive, business critical, important information. And therefore, I should really think through how I'm going to manage, protect, and recover it in time of need. I learned that versioning is really built for restore. Replication is built for business continuity. But really, neither is really built for cyber resilience. And I learned that AWS Backup is great for certain use cases and a solid tool, especially if you're starting out in the cloud and with AWS. But specifically for cyber resilience, it does have its limitations. And so given these 4 learnings, the question is always, well, what do I do? How do I ensure then that my S3 data is cyber resilient? We at Rubrik think we have a really great solution to answer that question. Our mission is to secure the world's data. We've been around for many years and are considered a market leader. Gartner MQ leader for the last 5 years, part of the IDC MarketScape for cyber recovery. We have the scale and reach and experience. We've been doing this again for over 10 years, 6,000 plus customers with the NPS score of 86, which is the top 1% of enterprise companies. And many industry accolades from across the world. But the thing I think I'm most proud of as somebody that works at Rubrik is that we secure the data of some of the largest, most important organizations around the world. They rely on us to make sure that in case of an emergency, they can get their data, their cloud data, back up and running with as few limitations as possible. And so how do we do that? We do that with the Rubrik Security Cloud. It is a ubiquitous tool that allows you to protect all your data, whether that data lives on premises, in a database, in the cloud, in multiple clouds. We support, for example, AWS, GCP, Azure, among many others, as well as SaaS applications like N365, Salesforce. And this breadth allows us to have this single pane of glass to control all of your data protection needs, so that you can view it, understand it, make critical decisions about it, and at the end of the day, recover it when you need to. And so what does that look like? In abstract, that sounds great, but I wanted to pass it over to Joe to give you guys a little bit of a demo here on how you might experience this in the real world.
Great. Thanks, Daniel. So this is the Rubrik Security Cloud. This is what you would log into as a user. What you didn't see is I logged in with SSO and MFA. This is fully auditable. From a high level, this is the only true zero trust platform in terms of cyber resilience and the way that we're architected. So when you log in, you get hit with this dashboard, and I'll show you from a standpoint of ubiquity. If I just hover over cloud, you'll notice there are conventional cloud workloads, AWS, Azure, GCP. When we add future cloud service providers, this is where they would be displayed. Likewise, as Daniel had mentioned, there are our SaaS offerings. We support Jira, E365, and Salesforce. And then we also support all of your conventional on-prem workloads. So in this case, it could be any hypervisor. You see Hyper-V, Acropolis, vSphere, and then other workloads like SAP HANA, Oracle, just to name a few. And so what does that really mean? It means this is one platform that answers the question, who's responsible for disaster recovery, but more importantly, who's responsible for cyber recovery? So when I click into our data protection module, you'll notice we've got a few tabs. By default, the navigation of the Rubrik Security Cloud is quite easy. Let me click on just one button, Reports. And in a second click, I can show you all the cloud providers that are having protection and what's happened. 23 out of 24, there's one that's out of compliance, meaning it didn't receive backup. And so from a simple visibility standpoint, this could also include on-prem and SaaS. You can answer the question, are we protected? Are we applying protection? So the question is this, well, how do we do this? And so let's just talk about a cloud provider. So in this case, we were talking about AWS today. Let's talk about an AWS service. And so either incrementally or programmatically, we can add AWS accounts. And what'll happen is every 15 minutes, these instances, whether it could be instances, EC2 buckets or databases, RDS, what have you, will be discovered. And so we can apply protection on a subscription so that you won't have a gap moving forward. Likewise, cloud best practices are good tagging strategies. We can apply or exclude workloads based on tags, and then we can directly apply protection to specific workloads. So I want to just show you real quick, and this is by no means comprehensive, but if I click into a workload, our navigation is quite easy. These green checkboxes are what you'd expect. If I click into a checkbox, you'll notice this is indexed, meaning we have file level searchability. By the way, we have global file level searchability if you're trying to locate a file. In this case, you'll notice I located an LM host file, but from a global search perspective up here, I could find a financial services file and leverage this tool as a data forensics or data location tool. And then likewise for recovery is as simple as clicking onto a button, hovering over the recovery point, choosing what you want your recovery options to be. We aren't tied to any regions. So this was backed up in US Oregon. I could restore to any of these regions like Northern Virginia and change whatever options, VPC networking, KMS key encryption, so forth. So Rubrik Security Cloud leverages backups. We use the word security because a lot of these modules are security. We have modules like data threat analytics that help identify whether you have a ransomware attack going on, and there's deep forensics behind that. And we also have tools like data security posture. We'd mentioned through this call a number of different capabilities to understand what kind of frameworks. This is looking at backups and is looking at whether or not there are HIPAA compliant or PII. You can create custom ones. We can report on this, and we have the ability to integrate with a number of different incident response like ServiceNow. We can integrate with your cloud service providers like Amazon EventBridge or Azure Event Grid. By no means is this comprehensive, but I wanted to give everyone a taste of what's going on, and we'll leave it there.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I think what that really showed, especially towards that end there, is that we can provide unique insight, especially into S3 data, which we've been talking about this entire time. I think one of the points we brought up earlier was that S3 can be perceived as a huge dumping ground with a lot of information. And the reality is a lot of that information is sensitive and critical, and our platform is able to really dive deep and understand where that sensitive and business critical data lives, so you can make more intelligent decisions on what you want to do with that data. And so I'll end this conversation by highlighting the 4 big benefits that a lot of our customers tell us we offer them. The first one here is around data visibility and control. With cloud sprawl and data sprawl becoming more of an issue, you have data not only across your AWS environment, but potentially across the different clouds that you have, and most likely on-prem as well. Having a unified view of all of your data so you can make a single decision on how to manage that protection is super important. The number 2 point here is we allow our organizations to reduce the risk of data theft by really highlighting and contextualizing threats and risks that live within your data. So again, identifying whether the data is sensitive, whether they're overprivileged users, monitoring for suspicious activities. These are all things that are critical for you to make sure your data is safe. Third thing here is Rubrik helps confidently back up and recover your data. So establishing immutable, isolated recovery points so that you can quickly recover when you need to. And finally, we talked about the cost element and how everybody is talking about cloud costs getting out of hand, needing to find a way to optimize and be more efficient with cloud costs. We can intelligently manage where data is stored. So if we need to move some of it to S3 IA or Glacier or other levels of storage, we have the ability to do that. So this is meant to just be, again, a quick introduction on Rubrik, as well as go through some of the things that we hear from our customers around S3 protection. If you do have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to provide you guys a customized demo or answer any questions related to S3 or beyond. Thank you so much for your time and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Daniel and Joe. Amazing presentation. I love the demo and all the information you provided, showing us how to protect our data in the cloud. Such an important topic right now, and something we are still trying to really get our hands on and heads wrapped around in a lot of ways. Things change very fast in this industry. So really appreciate the update on on what Rubrik is doing in there. I did want to mention that unfortunately, Daniel and Joe cannot hang around for questions today, but they'll be following up on all the questions that you asked, so stay tuned. So with that, folks, we're nearly wrapped for this event, but I do have to do one more thing first. Make one of you a little richer. And the winner of the $250 Amazon gift card is Rakesh Arora from Maryland, over in my neck of the woods. Congratulations to you, Rakesh. We will be in touch to get you your card ASAP, so sit tight. And with that, folks, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Rubrik for making this event possible. Thanks to you attendees for being here, always for your great questions and interest in the topic. I hope you all have a great weekend and that you can maybe sneak out a little early today, possibly. Just don't tell the boss. Don't tell them I might do that too as well. So anyway, with that, can't wait to see everyone in the next event. That concludes this event. Have a great rest of your day, folks.